Hello folks, welcome to another edition of the Dr. Mark Foster Show. Today I will be talking about some speculative thoughts I have on possible events which may happen in the not so distant future. First, let me qualify, I'm not a seer, I'm not a futurist, and I am certainly not, God forbid, a prophet. So I have no way of knowing the future. My conclusions are based mostly on my own reflections, but also on reading things written by other people, listening to certain broadcasts by people who have themselves been speculating on the near-term events in Earth's future. I will begin by talking about a dream that I had in the early morning hours of September 5th, 2012. I dreamt about a series of fiery meteors falling all around me. I then saw them as rocky objects on the ground. Emotionally, my state was bewilderment, not fear. In retrospect, I think that sense of calm that I had in the midst of this kind of catastrophe, bewilderment, was a lesson for the future, perhaps for me, so that I don't overreact in the event that those kinds of things happen. Nevertheless, sharing in God's unity and sovereignty could have astronomical consequences. This is a passage, an excerpt from the Tablet of the Holy Mariner by the founder of the Baha'i faith, the Prophet Baha'u'llah. They that are within the cause of God have desired to ascend unto that state which the Lord hath ordained to be above their stations. Glorified be my Lord, the all-glorious. Whereupon the burning meteor cast them out from them that abide in the kingdom of his presence. Glorified be my Lord, the all-glorious. That seems to relate to my dream. Now, I realize that dreams are not conclusive evidence of anything. They are frequently just imagination. On the other hand, Abdu'l-Baha said, and this is from the book Some Answered Questions, which is a collection of table talks that he delivered, how often it happens that it sees a dream in the world of sleep, and its signification becomes apparent 2 years afterward in corresponding events. In the same way, how many times it happens that a question which one cannot solve in the world of wakefulness is solved in the world of dreams. In wakefulness, the eye sees only for a short distance, but in dreams, he who is in the east sees the west. Awake, he sees the present. In sleep, he sees the future. In wakefulness, by means of rapid transit, at the most he can travel only 20 farsakhs, approximately 80 miles an hour. In sleep, in the twinkling of an eye, he traverses the east and the west. Recently, I came across a broadcast by the Slate News Channel, which is from Slate, a digital product of Washington Post Newsweek Interactive. It's from March 6th of 2013, and the announcer said, 2013 is fast becoming the year of the asteroid. Earth is about to experience a close encounter with an asteroid just days after being buzzed by another space rock. Asteroid 2013 ET will zip past us Saturday, March 19th, at a distance of 600,000 miles, just 5 days after the March 5th pass-by of asteroid 2013 EC, 230,000 miles away, passing us at 2.5 times the distance to our moon. ET poses no imminent threat to Earth. However, asteroid Armageddon aficionados take note. Both of these extraterrestrial vagabonds were discovered only days ago. And, considering that the 55-foot asteroid was never detected before exploding over Russia last month, you may feel a bit unsettled. But astronomers say, worry not. 95% of all near-Earth asteroids large enough to cause another mass extinction are already mapped, and none poses an immediate peril to our earthly existence. So, I think that looking at that term, the year of the asteroid, is very significant. There have been a number of asteroids this year. As usual, there are meteors. Whether there will be more asteroids, I don't know. Perhaps. Regardless, if perhaps that there will be an asteroid impact this year, which is something that I think might be the case, or an impact from meteors, perhaps a whole bunch of them at the same time, that would cause tremendous amounts of global devastation. Perhaps tsunamis, earthquakes, food riots, and flooding, all types of disasters, really unfortunate catastrophes might result from that kind of thing happening. In the wake of it, after these kinds of impacts take place, when food is short, when people are looking for scarce resources in different countries, that itself might trigger warfare. The fact that numerous nations, including the United States, have built these underground bunkers, these deep underground military bases, and appear to be building them at a feverish pace, might indicate that perhaps they fear, regardless of whether they have any inside knowledge, I have no way of knowing that, but at least they might fear that such a thing might happen, and that they might need to be underground as a part of transition of government in the wake of that type of catastrophe. Obviously, it would be extraordinarily difficult to govern the United States from a place which is being impacted by meteors or asteroids, and perhaps even especially if much of the eastern coast of the United States is decimated or wiped out. So again, I don't know. I am again not a prophet. I can't speak for the future, but all I can do is speculate on things that I think might happen. A psychic and tarot card reader has predicted multiple meteor impacts, flooding, storms, volcanism, meaning volcanoes, nuclear issues, monetary problems, and involuntary localism for 2013. Moreover, according to author and clairvoyant Betsy Lewis, this is a quotation, "Everything is going crazy. We just got it wrong about December 21st, 2012. The mega events are going to happen this year, 2013. Everything is happening this year. I've just found so many synchronicities with that number, 13, going back at least 96 years. I believe aliens have been warning us. Well, I think we've had celestial beings or interdimensional beings warning us about 13. And I started thinking, is this the date? Is this the year 2013? I think it's this year. I think we better fasten our seatbelts, because it's going to get worse. It's like we walked into a parallel world with the beginning of 2013. These strange shootings, all these strange things happening worldwide. We have extreme weather now, earthquakes where there have never been earthquakes, huge earthquakes happening right now since the beginning of the year. These strange noises, sinkholes forming worldwide, and asteroids flying by. We've got UFOs and fireballs being seen everywhere, birds falling dead out of the sky, and millions of fish washing up on shores around the world. And I think this is methane gas from deep within the core of the Earth, because our Earth is getting ready to do something big. I found something really interesting about methane gas that a scientist said. Methane gas, turns into formaldehyde. And, these birds were found in Beebe, Arkansas. Their insides were like liquefied. The scientist researcher was Andrea Silverthorne, who investigated that. There's going to be a lot of strange things happening this year, and I think we all have to be prepared. And I believe there's going to be a solar event. I think that's going to happen. I know that retired Army Major Ed Dames has talked about his kill shot, the technologically damaging consequences of extreme solar radiation. So that is one prediction, and there are others. Emory University Associate Professor of Political Science Courtney Brown, whose training is primarily in the area of applied mathematics, owns an organization called the Farsight Institute. It really is a personal activity, and it's entirely separate from his work as an associate professor at Emory. And Brown is into an area called remote viewing. Now, I do not recommend that people get involved in psychic phenomena, whether it's precognition, telepathy, or remote viewing, or any kind of psychic phenomena. As I've said in other broadcasts, I think it's very dangerous. I think that it is much better to get one's information by reflection on holy texts, by meditation, by prayer. Nevertheless, I think it makes sense for me, since I have this information, to share it. What Brown basically has predicted is somewhat similar to what Betsy Lewis said in that quotation I just read. He predicts large meteors. He thinks that might lead to tsunamis and possible volcanism. He talks about extensive flooding on coastal areas throughout the world, solar radiation, a lot of storms and other severe weather. He predicts that as a result of these events, that there will be widespread self-organized relocation from coastal areas. In other words, there will be refugees. Governments will break down so that official rescue operations will basically be non-existent. The food supply system will break down. The entire vehicular transport system will break down, and there will be an extensive loss of buildings near coasts. Here is a brief quotation from Brown's own writing on this subject. Since it seems likely that major governments would be aware in advance of most near-term global threats, then it also seems likely that they would take some actions that would reflect their anticipation of those events. These actions would likely not be explained to the masses to avoid panic. Below are largely anomalous governmental actions that may indicate an awareness of a near-term global threat that is suggested by these remote viewing data. Remote viewing, again, is a type of systematic clairvoyance. Again, these are only speculations. He talks about the global seed vault having been sealed, and which he says is prepared to deal with any type of global catastrophe. Say things are totally destroyed, at least they would be able to go back to this seed vault and extract these seeds and in effect restart agriculture. He says that it is as if various governments are not expecting to have to pay back their debts, perhaps anticipating a global economic reset due to reasons not currently stated. And he also says, digging is everywhere. The U.S. has no nuclear enemies, yet it is digging huge underground facilities in inhospitable regions difficult for the masses to reach. Why? On the other hand, the Chinese tend to think collectively, and China is digging extraordinary subway complexes under most of its major cities in a crash program that seems odd in terms of timing and scope. Subways are, of course, conveniently located underground tunnels, and such tunnels could house millions of people in an emergency. Russia announced in 2011 that it is adding 5,000 new nuclear bomb shelters in Moscow, enabling it to protect all of Moscow's residents. The program is to be rushed so that it is finished in 2012. Why? Russia has no nuclear enemies. Russia's new subway system has also been placed deeper than needed so that they can be used as deep emergency shelters. Again, why? Why all these preparations, and why all the rush? Now, on February 14th of 2013, Brown suggested that the recent asteroids may have been a fulfillment of that remote viewing data. He argues that there are multiple timelines, or in effect parallel universes, that perhaps in another timeline or another parallel universe, these types of devastations might have taken place, but not here. In other words, in effect, we managed to bite the bullet, and we didn't have it strike us. Now, personally, I am somewhat skeptical about that. In my view, the present-day world order needs to be unraveled. A new world order, eventually global governance, a global government, needs to be established. There are no timelines for continued disunity, or using Roy Baskar's term, demi-reality. How could we possibly have a timeline for continuing demi-reality? However harsh these disasters might be, and I assume they will be quite harsh, we need them. We very obviously need them. How else could we possibly overcome the tremendous difficulties that we see around us in the world today? So I'm somewhat skeptical about that whole concept of multiple timelines. Cliff High, who is also interested in remote viewing and is associated informally with Courtney Brown, originated something called the WebBot Project, which is a type of precognition work that he does along with some colleagues. And he himself is very skeptical about what Courtney Brown has said and about the fact that it has already been fulfilled. Cliff High feels that these types of devastations will take place. He is not optimistic that these things have already happened, and so his views are somewhat different. Then, an amateur geologist based his admittedly controversial conclusions on an empirical analysis of data in the public domain. This is from a YouTube video which he put together. During the day of the 9.0 earthquake in Japan on March 11, 2011, Earth's magnetic field nearly flipped. March 11, 2012, 1 year later, Earth's magnetic field did nearly the same thing. Just for the record, just in a few days after this magnetic field flipped, an executive order was signed for resource preparedness, which in short include the absolute control over food, water, all forms of energy and resources. Think what kind of event would set that into motion? Something massive. Conclusion. Here are a few bullet points. There is a direct connection to Earth's magnetic field experiencing anomalies around the time of the megaquakes. Earth's magnetic field is experiencing the very same thing year after year to the date. March 11th, the last 2 years, it completely flipped, referring to 2010 and 2011. These megaquakes and patterns only happen at the beginning of the year. Earth booms increase all around this time as well. Exact dates for the year-by-year happenings for anomalies of Earth's magnetic field and auroras in connection. I was able to predict beforehand activity in knowing this data before any solar activity and before any NOAA, that's National Oceanic Forecasts. There appears to be a cover-up with some space weather that can't be the same to the date year after year, especially proven due to the accuracy of the predictions. All the anomalies in connection to this data have increased in severity the past 3 years. And so he concludes. The answer is simple but scary. If the source was something mainstream, then somebody else would have predicted activity and put this data together before me. I would have to be silly to think I'm smarter than the minds at NASA and the whole scientific community that could have put this data together. Maybe many are blinded by solar activity. Perhaps that could have been an agenda all along, and, as why I have even predicted accurately, blame the sun beforehand. If I were to guess this source has a magnetic field and comes into some alignment of Earth, repelling Earth's magnetic field, then days later, the protons reach Earth. That would explain the same magnetic field with auroras patterns on the exact dates over and over again. That's exactly what I believed when I made the predictions, looking for certain magnetic field events in charged particles headed to Earth. That is why the predictions came before the solar eruptions. So, those are some interesting ideas. Now, whether that has any merit, I don't know. Let's look for a moment at President Barack Obama. Now, all presidents age considerably while in office. Arguably, I would say that President Obama has perhaps aged more than most. Pardon me. In his first term. Given the current state of political and perhaps geological and astronomical affairs, the stresses of his job must be unimaginable. Presuming that the president's 2012 Republican challenger, Mitt Romney, was fully briefed on current emergency preparedness, the following statement by his son, Tag Romney, might make sense. Here is what Tag Romney said. He, my father, Mitt Romney, wanted to be president less than anyone I've met in my life. He had no desire to run. If he could have found someone else to take his place, he would have been ecstatic to step aside. He is a very private person who loves his family deeply and wants to be with them. He loves his country, but he doesn't love the attention. So, if my impressions are correct, the tightening throughout the world of government surveillance, the development of extremely vigilant national security states, the penalties against whistleblowers. All of these activities are perhaps a rational response to impending natural disasters and the related threats of perhaps inconceivable social disorganization, political chaos, economic instability, and even anarchy. Intensive military planning might also be taking place. That is because, in the wake of these possible Earth changes, or perhaps even while they are occurring, certain nations concerned about their survival might attempt to plunder the spoils of a chaotic global environment. Many individuals, hungry and thirsty, might behave in much the same way. This is a quotation from Peter Schwartz and Doug Randall in a publication called An Abrupt Climate Change Scenario and Its Implications for United States National Security. It was published in October of 2003. As global and local carrying capacities are reduced, tensions could mount around the world, leading to two fundamental strategies: defensive and offensive. Nations with the resources to do so may build virtual fortresses around their countries, preserving resources for themselves. Less fortunate nations, especially those with ancient enmities with their neighbors, may initiate in struggles for access to food, clean water, or energy. Unlikely alliances could be formed as defense priorities shift, and the goal is resources for survival rather than religion, ideology, or national honor. Diplomatic action will be needed to minimize the likelihood of conflict in the most impacted areas, especially in the Caribbean and Asia. However, large population movements in this scenario are inevitable. Learning how to manage those populations, border tensions that arise, and the resulting refugees will be critical. Recently, there has been a lot of attention placed on the subject of gun control. My speculation, and again it's only a speculation, please don't take what I'm saying that seriously, is that all of the attention which has been recently placed on the gun control issue might be a kind of psychological operations or psyops, getting people all worked up, in effect misdirecting people from the warfare, the drastic earth changes, or perhaps a good term would be planetary remodeling, possibly anticipated in 2013 or soon thereafter. Should circumstances permit, even, the possibility of martial law is, I think, evident. Anarchy is never pleasant. Tyranny is something a lot of people fear, but if I were given a choice, personally, between living in a state that had absolutely no functioning government, complete chaos, disorder, versus living in a place where there was some level of anarchy or police state, I would choose the second option. I would much rather be in a place where at least, in spite of restrictions on personal freedoms, which personally don't really matter all that much to me anyway, I think Americans in particular take those much too far. So in spite of restrictions on personal freedoms, if at least I were guaranteed food, water, shelter, well, that would be good. I'd be happy about that. So, although some transparency by government is generally beneficial, too much transparency can be counterproductive, even dangerous. According to radio talk show personality John J.R. Moore, this is what he says. This is from a broadcast he made on December 28th of 2012. This information is coming from people in the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, FEMA, which is the Federal Emergency Management Agency, and the U.S. military, that there will be martial law in this country, the U.S., between now and Memorial Day, which is May 27th, 2013. Two of the three sources are pointing specifically toward March as being the most likely month. In addition, one of these people, a military officer, was at a briefing. They were told in very general terms about what they'd be told to do. And they further told them that if they did not follow orders, that their immediate families would be murdered. The military officer himself is considering committing suicide as a result. One last thing I have: 150,000 Palestinians have been cleared to be brought to this country, the U.S. These are military-aged men, 18 to 40 years old, which we believe have had at least some rudimentary military training and will probably get more once they get here. And that's what I got. So, if by some chance foreign troops are in the United States, I suspect that their purpose is to reinforce crisis management, not as some fear to deprive Americans of certain personal liberties. In addition, Moore contends that the government hopes for a violent response from members of the gun culture. That response, he argues, would provide officials with a convenient excuse to disarm the public. Well, I disagree with that. I think that the situation is much, much more grave than that. I don't think it has anything to do with disarming people. I think that we are in for some really, really difficult stuff. We are about to be on the most violent roller coaster of our lives, perhaps of the ages, and we need to be prepared. Here is a statement made by Dave Hodges. Jim Marrs discussed how approximately 400 to 500 top-level bankers have left their positions and have gone into seclusion. Marrs reminded my listening audience of how the elite have developed seed vaults, which only they have access to. Marrs was clearly alluding to the fact that some very bad events are coming, and the global elite are aware of it and are moving to meet the threat. My insider sources inform me that the same thing is happening in various federal organizations who have currently retired from the CIA, DHS, which is the Department of Homeland Security, the NSA, National Security Agency, and FEMA. This fact is indisputable. I have first-hand knowledge of 3 ex-Fed officials and their families who have relocated to safety enclaves when doing so was very disruptive to their respective families' lives. Increasingly, it is looking like some major event or events is or are coming, and persons with insider information are attempting to remove themselves from harm's way. When government officials, he continues, from the various alphabet soup agencies retire en masse, it is not necessarily a noteworthy event. However, when the same officials retire en masse and then relocate to form their own survivalist enclaves, then this is something that we should all sit up and take notice of, especially when we are seeing the same behavior on the part of Wall Street executives. In my dealings with purported alphabet soup agency informants, I have been receiving some very dire warnings in terms of what lies ahead for America. Given the above facts, it should be understandable why I found the recent Hagman interview with Rosebud to be a little more than interesting. I have had conversations with 2 insiders and a relative of another insider who tell similar stories of a coming series of apocalyptic events. much of the Hagman information, to a large extent, corresponds to the information I've received, except for the fact that many ex-feds are forming self-sustaining communities. Then he continues, it is a matter of official agency policy that some current DHS and CIA officials and their families will be provided safe sanctuary in various strategic locations in Colorado in times of trouble. Most people in the know are aware of the underground facilities which lie below the Denver International Airport, which has an international connected railway to the Cheyenne Mountain, NORAD, Fort Carson, Peterson Air Force Base underground facilities. The structures are part of the continuity of government program developed by the United States in the early days of the Cold War. However, these facilities are increasingly becoming the planned refuge for many of the global elite residing within the United States when all hell breaks loose. In September 2011, the evacuation of this elite to this safe hideaway was rehearsed in the DHS exercise known as Operation Mountain Guardian, in which the Denver airport was shut down to commercial air traffic except for specific undesignated planes which were allowed to land in preparation for some staged catastrophe. Parallel to Colorado being prepared to become the new capital, it is highly relevant to note that retired officials from the DHS and the CIA, who are not part of the privileged elite but who know what is coming, have developed their own enclaves in the Rocky Mountains outside of Denver and Colorado Springs. As it has been described to me, that these facilities are a poor man's imitation of the Denver International Airport facilities. The structures are largely natural, but are very well equipped, and the resources include a self-contained air supply. My source for this information is a former DHS insider. Recently, retired officials from the NSA have relocated to an area in the Ozarks, where they have access to underground safety zone, which have or are being transformed into mini villages of self-sustainable protection. My source is an individual who retired from the NSA almost 2 years ago. Recently retired officials from FEMA are relocating to mountainous areas in North Carolina, approximately 1 hour from the coast. Pardon me. Their enclave contains the same resources involving air, water, food, and guns. These enclaves also include underground structures which are sensibly self-contained and can serve to isolate the inhabitants from the outside. I have 2 sources on this information, which includes a family member and a retired FEMA official who has chosen not to participate in this location. Now finally, and this is really getting into the speculative area, alien abductions. This is a quotation from Jim Sparks, who was a researcher in that area. What he said was this: primarily in the mass abductions that I've seen, they primarily involve what are commonly referred to as greys, an alleged species of extraterrestrials. They're getting environmental lessons. That's over a 19-year period. I would suspect very strongly that since the emphasis on almost every ET non-human intelligent race and species is on our environment, I suspect something bad is going to happen there. However, the push from the future to now is to have all 6 billion of us, at that point close to 8 billion of us, survive and evolve into the future and into the galactic neighborhood. It can be changed. A handful relative to the population on the planet now survive all the upcoming environmental garbage. Only about a handful, relatively speaking, and then past that we evolve and repopulate. Shoghi Effendi, the guardian of the Baha'i faith, in a pilgrim's note, that is an unauthoritative statement that he allegedly made, said that the Earth in the future would be populated by mostly darker-skinned peoples. The lighter-skinned, so-called Caucasian or white peoples, would no longer have as large a population as they do now. If we look at where people of European ancestry live, in Europe, in North America, Australia, New Zealand, other places, those areas are very, very vulnerable to devastation. And so if there is some mass catastrophe, one might imagine that those are the people who would be principally affected. Well, that is the program for today. Until next time, this is Dr. Mark Foster. Have a good one.